Somehow you must allow that flow to continue. You must allow that beingness to transition. You must allow that relationship to transition. And in some ways you can say, yes, indeed, you must allow that death to occur. 2.5 years ago, Rico began an 8-month fasting process and transmutation process. In the course of that process, the physical structure changed dramatically. Part of that process meant losing about 80% of the red blood cells of the body and maintaining a state for the next 2 years of suppressed expression of the bone marrow, severe anemia, and yet continuing living in this realm. Now, what I'm about to say, as this becomes recorded, and if this part of it happens to be stuck out there on the internet, you probably have some dire consequences coming to this one, and that's okay. So be it. Because this is what the established mind control system on this planet does not want to be expressed. For the last 2 years, this body has operated with very little blood in it, very little red blood cells in it, and nonetheless continued working generally at a 100-hour-a-week type of pace, doing doctor stuff, doing teacher stuff, traveling, doing healing work, etc., etc. And then came the realization that this would be the last year of its demonstration in form, in biological form. And so, as a result, these changes started accelerating. It was necessary to demonstrate to this world some of the things which we would consider otherwise as impossible for humans or humanoid biologic forms to sustain. This, of course, is a lot of this stuff is everyday activities of yogis and those who find the way to express possibility and creativity through these processes of falling away, the attachments of conventional thought. That is a certain kind of work. There's not a whole lot of pleasure in that process. There's not a whole lot of reward in that process. There's not a whole lot of transactionality in that process. It's different from traditional guruism, where you get to remain somebody in a high seat. You collect followers galore, and because in truth there's less and less of you every moment along the way. And therefore that which you are demonstrating is not that which claims credit for what is demonstrated. Does that make sense? What is being demonstrated, therefore, is simply further unfoldment of infinite expression of Source through these channels. And when that heart space is open and that intent of being as service, which is beyond the state of being as I am a good servant, or I hope I am being a good servant. I want to be recognized as a good servant. It is beyond those layers. It is the process of release of the I, release of the me, and just simply allowing that Source express infinitely so, such that everything that is creation of source as source is expression for source. When one allows this process of the evolving into realization, it's kind of hard to get up in the morning and go to work, or go eat something, or respond to emails, or respond to even when someone says, "Oh, I love you," or "What do you want? What is your desire?" You're sort of dissolving. You're dissolving into the field. And yet the physicality may remain for a while. The heart still pumps. Memories of the person and the personality and all of this may still be in the field. And yet what it remains from the construct of perspective is that which is desirous of containment within a localized field. One wants this, all of this, what is called in many of the Buddhic texts, it is called suchness. All of this suchness that is in flow and in form and in existence and expression as this sentient being here. There's so much of that desire for that to be like contained and brought back into a space that would hold itself in a localized sense and then relate to me as a localized being for that type of intimacy. Again, people would look, that's what people want. More is being called for in the outer realms, beyond this physicality realm. For those souls that are increasingly arriving and transiting at the rainbow bridge between these worlds. Again, more on that a little bit later. And so then the physical death spiral began. In September, it began to accelerate. In October, it really essentially all came apart. So what was that? It was, at this point in time, officially undiagnosed internal bleeding, or just simply no more blood being made. And it dropped all the way down to a hemoglobin level of 2 or less. The normal is about 17. And yet there was still a continuation of 100% saturation of oxygen in the body. How was this attainable if you've lost 90% of your red cells? This was because of transmutation. This is not understood by medical science. But this was the result of the transmutational work. This was the result of what had been the atonement work done before. This was part of what was necessary to demonstrate. There are plenty of other ways to die. But let's talk about what is the most underreported way. That underreported way is that transition through the Buddhic field. And a return therefrom. Transition through the Buddhic field means a state of an individual consciousness, an individual identity, an individual personality, has what it is called a death experience or a near-death experience or a transition and a return. Then it goes about trying to live in this reality again, trying to relate it to others. And most others find that it is not very relatable after a while, and the person gives up and the person goes back into their everyday acquiescence to material circumstances. There are rarely experiences of going beyond the self, going into the Buddhic field, and thus also transcending the bounds of this experience in the physical and having death through ascension. Death through ascension and expansion is very, very different than traditional death. When one expands into the Buddhic field, the Buddhic mind, and thus into source spiral, one is not going into a localized spirit mode. There is the expansion into the allness, and there is the realization of what are called the 10 directions of space, what are called the allness of the cosmos. This is what is that nature of that Buddhic expansion. So one leaves the physical body and one is as the physical body, and one is as everything else, and one is. And then there is no one. And then there is just realization. What's it look like? This one sat in this chair when there was hardly enough energy to even move, to even roll over. Got up into meditation, made the decision that there must be stillness meditation right now at this moment, at no matter what the cost, because this is a step off into many other states beyond this. And so getting into meditation, witnessing that the body itself was dying, and going into samadhi. And then experiencing the death of the body. First there were seizures. This body went into seizures. It was bouncing all over the place. And then the room lit up. Bright, bright emanations of light. And then the body went limp. And then there came this sort of allness state. What was it like? In the first example, that first process, you see there's an individual soul that's still there. There's this individual mental body, this psyche that's watching a physical self. It says, like in Patrick Swayze in the movie Ghost. Remember when he got killed? And he's looking back and he sees Demi Moore there holding his body, and then he realizes he's dead and he's left his body and he's a ghost. There's that individuated, retained consciousness of a self, you see? That's the traditional way. In the Buddhic way of expansion, no, there's not. There is that, and there is so much more. There is a sense that, yes, there is the body, and yet there are all of these realms. You are the cosmos. You are realization beyond form and beyond locality, and you include locality at the same time. Does that make sense? And so this was happening here in this room. There were some folks upstairs asleep at the time. But it was occurring. It occurred over the course of what were several hours down here in the middle of the night. There would be then a recongealing of consciousness back into this form, and this body would come alive again. And then another wave of that, another set of seizures. And then the death process again, and the expansion process again. So this happened 3 times at least during the course of about 3 hours. In that state of Buddhic expansion, there was something else that happened. There was a creation of a release of the I am. There was a calling forth, a resounding sort of cosmic shattering. The I am is free. The I am is free. What this meant as I started off a few hours ago telling you that through the tunnel yields arrival at creation. Through the tunnel of death yields arrival of creation. So through the tunnel of this Buddhic transition, expansion process, came the arrival of the release of the I am. Then there had to be coming back into this form, and then the next day trying to get up and move around. The body was getting weaker. It was accepting that the end was near. That acceptance is a very important process to share with you, and yet at the same time, unfortunately, you would not be able to digest. Just know that when your time comes, you will know. You will know when it is getting close. And you will see the choices that you have in front of you. You will see the choice to fear what is happening, or to suffer, or to become sentimental, or to become resentful. But you will also see what goes beyond that level of your choices. If it is your true intention to become realized in this lifetime, no matter what it is you may have been experiencing in all those years that you called your life, you can still have the opportunity to awaken before you complete the death process, the death spiral. You hope to be able to communicate with a few people, to be able to let them know. Sometimes it's a few instructions you want to impart, but mostly you just want them to understand how precious they are because they exist. You want them to understand, even if they are pissed at you for whatever reasons, whatever it is, you will find matters so little for you to be right. It matters so little. for them to finally have understood what you were trying to show them. And it matters so little. Even what you think is this process called completion. You will just simply know you are leaving.